Also very important is the gopher. Do not underemphasize it. Everyone's like, I do not have skills that can be used in CTF. That's false. Everyone can be a gopher, and it's a very important rule because hackers do not live on Mountain Dew alone, okay? You've got to have food and drink and people that help organize things for you, so it actually really is important. I already mentioned teamwork. That really is crucial. I can't emphasize that enough. Team size is an interesting debate. The game is hard. I mentioned a lot of different skills you need, and you're exercising these skills simultaneously. So I don't think a team with less than 6 people, if you were the 6 best in the world in each of these areas, you might be able to win. But less than that, you're going to need more than 6 people to help share the load and do these different things. Because it's just that much going on that a team that has more people can kind of outperform you. If there's 25 services, which there are, yeah.
Is there a max number?
So good question. Some years yes, and some years no. Often what they'll do is there's a table you can play at, and they'll say, so they know they can't ultimately restrict the number of people because I can VPN in as many people as I want or shuffle binaries off to somebody else to analyze another room, which many teams do. So no, there's no ultimate rule, but usually there's a limit at the table, 8 to 10 to 12 maybe. And sometimes what they've done is they've opened it up. You can start with 8 people, and then the next day they'll let 10 people, and they'll let 12 people, or maybe the last hour they'll let just everybody sit there. But they can't really effectively limit the total number of people playing because, again, I can share the binary I've got, upload it to a wiki, or to a distributed thing that other people are accessing and have them divide the work and send the stuff back. There's no way you can do that. Now what happens, though, is that if I have 50 people on my team, coordination is such a problem. In fact, that's actually what happened. The School of Root team is led by Chris Eagle. He's one of the best guys sort of in this thing. He's been doing it for years. He's phenomenal. I have just a huge amount of respect for him. He actually literally wrote the book on the IDA, which is the main sort of disassembly tool that you use for binary reverse engineering, and the sort of standard book on text on the subject of how to use it and work with it is written by him. He's phenomenally good. He would take a big team of his students, some other people as well, and kind of form together this big team. But for years they had trouble. I'll get to a section later where I talk about how we beat them and we did some dirty tricks. But they would have trouble because they had so many people that coordination they were sort of heavier, right? Was it worth it was the question. That's exactly why the team slot is here. Do you want a small team? Do you want a big team? In this case, small means like 8 people, 10 people is a small team. 30 people is a big team.
What about shifts, running shifts?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so the way that they do it, the finals they've done it the last couple years, you had like 10 hours a day that you're working, but then even after you're done, you're going back, you can still analyze your binaries. You can't send attacks. So typically, like every morning, there's a big jump in spikes. And so you're always like, oh, what is Chris Eagle going to come with now? Because he would go back and just sit and focus on one thing and not be distracted. He would just crank out some amazing work. And so you're always afraid what teams were going to come in with the next day. So to some degree, you didn't have to have shifts because you had fixed times, but to some degree you did because you have to, you have to show some progress overnight because other teams are going to be working on things. Or you could just not worry about it and see what happened, which some teams do, or not try not to sleep. There's a team called the Sexy Pandas, mostly Spanish-speaking guys that are just phenomenal. They have a really small team who will do really well for the first 24 hours. Really well. But they don't sleep, or 36 maybe. And then like they just die. I feel so bad for them because they're brilliant guys. They're almost always the first ones to score and jump in the lead, and they're really, really good. But there's only a few of them, and they don't have enough people, and they don't sleep, and so again, seriously, the third day they're out, they're done, and they're just infected, so it's sad. Don't spy on people. That's what I say. Don't take it the wrong way if people say get out on watch. So if you're at Defcon, don't take it the wrong way if they ask you to leave because they assume everyone's a spy because they're sending spies to everyone else. That's a question that's too hard and not interesting. Dirty tricks. It says MJ's Playhouse, free candy. If you can't read it. It's I think it's in Alaska, an actual van that's up there. So CTF is hacking, and what's hacking without some dirty tricks, right? This is my favorite part of the I love the creative, sort of different, outside-the-box thinking. Who's heard the phrase, security is only as strong as the weakest link? Excellent. I didn't even give you a little hint, right? We got some chain links in the background there. So what is usually, there's a couple different right answers, but what's some of the usual answers you hear for the weakest link? User is absolutely one of them. And physical? Passwords. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for specifically in this case. And that's kind of related to users, right? But passwords is the one I was looking for. One year, the score server, you got a password to log into the score server, right? To check your team's score, to submit your keys, and to see what your overwrite key is, right? So I use my overwrite key to override other teams' scores, and there was a button there that said like change override key. And you're like, well, why would I hit that? And the answer is you wouldn't really, but you could. I don't know why, because it didn't make a difference. If somebody else stole my override key, who cares? All they can do is give me more points with it, so it doesn't really do you any good to change it. But if you did change it, your overrides wouldn't work unless you put the new key into your scripts, right? So the score server password didn't do anything. It was also the root password of your box. It was also your database password. So everyone's changed the root password of their box. Well, except actually 2008, one team didn't at the very beginning of School of Root own them. But they learned, yeah, rookie mistake. Come on, like you don't plug into the network until your root password is changed. This is like, you know, the most obvious thing. So you can just log in as root and own every service immediately. School was very gentlemanly and gracious and didn't choose to immediately win the entire game the way they probably could have by solving every service instantly. And told them so they could change the password. But so assuming you changed your root password, which again that year everybody did, and assuming you also had the database password, which didn't really matter because the web service wasn't actually used that year. It was kind of useless. But you had the key file that your password was originally in that's world readable. But if you change your root password and change your database password, who cares? The password's not useful for anything except logging into the score server, where you can change the override key. So if you watch the graph of School of Root, I always got to pick on them because they were always the ones near us in the lead or beating us. Their graph for overrides was like this until I logged in as them and hit the button. And it went flat. And so we're like looking over, waiting for them to notice, and 15 minutes go by, and 45 minutes go by, and they're like, oh, hit the button! They're all like yelling, you can see what's on it. If I fix it, they fix it. And so we're looking over there, watching them, and their points are going up, and about 15 minutes go by, we hit the button again. Like 2 hours go by before they notice that we've hit the button again, and this time they're furious. They're like, who hit the button? They're asking around, and we're like, what are you talking about? Another half an hour goes by, we hit the button again. This time they're like, okay, no, there's a problem. And then they go up to the organizers, who we had asked beforehand. Anything that you want to do that's potentially hacking the infrastructure, it's always nice to say, I see this thing, it might be fun, we'd like to do this. And the organizers were like, they didn't properly secure that file, or they didn't change their database password. Play ball, go for it. You know, like that's what this is about. So we're like, sweet. So they knew already what was going on, and they come up and you could see him complaining. The guy's like, he's like, so how could that password have changed? They're like, we don't know. No one hit the button. He was like, really? Well, how could you have? Like, well, you had to have the password, but you know, but the pass. Oh, can we change our password? He's like, now you're asking the right question. Yes, you may change your password to the score server. Here it is. Here's your new one. We couldn't do this again. So, and apparently, some other teams actually had the same idea. They were even dirtier. What they did was on some of the web services, they embedded a CSRF attack. So if you had logged into their server, logged into the score server with the same browser that you visited any of these other ones, it told your browser to reset the password, reset the password, reset the password. I didn't hear of it actually working on anybody. Probably because, again, that year I don't think they actually even had a web service, or I was weak in the web security. But that would have been, I would have loved to have had somebody do that and actually get some points for it. One of my favorite dirty tricks and hacks from the competition was with the badges. This is actually a picture of somebody soldering on a port, not USB, was it USB? I forget, maybe USB port to the badge, so you can actually program it. You can connect your badge and program to do different things. And these badges at the time could do infrared. They could transmit infrared signals back and forth. It was pretty neat. And some buddies of mine were like, sweet, let's transmit turn-off codes. Laptops that have infrared remotes. Macs being one of them, have the front row menu button. You can bring front row up. It's like HPs and compacts have the suspend remote. And actually, some of them have a little laptop that pops out. Do you have?
I was going to ask you, was that Travis Goodspeed?
No, it was not.
Okay, don't worry about what I was going to say.
Okay, all right. It was not. That was not him. That did that. So. They actually looked up online, found all their turn-off codes, and they did some other really cool hacks. They actually used a pair of like headphones, stripped off the wire, and used it as plugged into the audio jack, ran Audacity, and actually used that to measure infrared signals by hooking up like an IR filter to the cable. And it's some wicked smart. I'm not a hardware hacker, and I'm glad I had friends who were, because they were doing some great stuff with this. So they figured out basically by pulling out these actual remotes, playing it into the device, and then removing a resistor. So that you got like ridiculous infrared. You're probably blinded if you got too close to their badges because they were just blasting infrared out.